This video gives an explanation of force field analysis, alongside some case studies of it in action. Force field analysis is a valuable tool to aid decision making. This tool was established by Kurt Lewin in the 1940s and was originally used in sociology. However, many businesses and organisations do use this tool today to weigh up a number of variables in decision making. Ultimately, one of the draws to this analysis is that it focuses in on the driving and restraining factors that will affect a change. We use a diagram to illustrate the forces influencing a change within an organisation. Now, this can be done on a loose sheet of paper or on a whiteboard in Teams. There are a variety of ways to illustrate this. First, the purpose of change is at the centre, with the forces either side. The forces for change are on the left, and forces resisting change are on the right. Now, begin to list the forces for and resisting change. These may range from a number of internal and external factors affecting the business and its proposed change. It is important to consider a variety of questions when you are carrying out this task. For example, what business benefit will the change deliver? Who supports the change? Who's against it? Why? How easy will it be to make the changes? Do you have enough time and resources to make it work? What are the costs involved? What other business processes could be affected by this change? And what are the risks? There could be a broad range of forces influencing change. Some examples for change could be a need to increase profitability, changing demographic trends, a decline in team morale, change in leadership, and a lack of innovation. Some examples resisting change could be ultimately the fear of the unknown, existing commitments to partner organisations, complications in government legislation, existing organisational structures, and employees adopting the wrong attitude. These forces will range from case to case. Now, for a visual influence, draw arrows. Bigger arrows for the forces that will have a greater influence on change, and smaller arrows for the factors that will have a lesser influence on the change. Scoring the factors is key. Now begin to reflect on the forces for change and against change, and score them. 5 being a strong driver for or against, and 1 being not so influential force. Scoring the factors accurately is essential for the success of this analytical tool, as not all the forces have the same weight in decision making. Totalling up each of the forces will give an indicator to whether the changes should or should not be pursued. The information you've gained can be used in a couple of ways: to decide whether to go ahead with the proposed change, and to think about how you can strengthen the forces to support the change and to weaken the ones that go against it. This will make the change successful. Let's see, what are the real strengths of using this tool? Well, the forces are scored and weighted, as they may all have different impacts on the business. This model takes that into consideration, as not all the forces have a big or small impact. It also gives the opportunity for reflection on the company and a chance to be analytical of that. Also, it gives the opportunity for employees across all layers of the business to give their opinions, especially if this is done as a team. For me, this strategy highlights the importance of teams within an organisation, as I believe this exercise would be best executed as a team rather than as an individual. Maybe a brainstorming session. Doing this will highlight a variety of forces of change and forces for resisting change, especially if it is rolled out throughout the different departments of an organisation to broaden views and opinions. Weaknesses. This process may not take into consideration the strategical lens the restraining forces or the driving forces are being viewed through. This will ultimately influence the overall decision. If this is only done by executives or managers within a company, it may not be a true or accurate representation of the strengths and weaknesses of change for the whole organisation. We need to take into consideration the strategy model, as processes influencing analysis and change are never linear and elements will always overlap and influence others. Alright, let's use a case study to illustrate this and see it in action. Waitrose and John Lewis have recently had a mass brand overhaul and a rollout of their new corporate identity. How could they have used force field analysis to aid their decision-making process? Taking into consideration a number of internal and external factors that could have been the driving forces for change and a total rebrand of their corporate identity. For example, the operating environment in retail at the moment has become a bit volatile and uncertain. A weaker pound is causing surging costs of buying goods overseas. It's still below 13% its usual level before Brexit referendum. There are also growing fears in a no-deal Brexit, which is influencing the housing market, slowing it down and shifting consumers towards renting, which means there is much less demand for big-ticket items such as large homewares. There has been an urgent need to increase profit and cash flow. As John Lewis are never knowingly undersold, they have been forced to cut prices to match those of competitors. These reductions have been at the highest level in over 10 years. Customer demand is changing and consumers are changing the way that they shop. There has been a hard hit to retailers as there has been a shift to shopping online. Some shoppers want to avoid visiting the physical shop and now have the ability to compare branded prices online within seconds. This all leads to a drive for convenience and a platform to get everything from the one source without having to go anywhere. An increase in competition. Waitrose customers have been eaten away by the likes of Aldi and Lidl as they've aggressively been undercut in price, and shoppers are becoming much more penny conscious. As well as this, Aldi and Lidl have been very clever with their marketing strategy, as well as their rapid growth. On average, Aldi are opening one store a week. Ultimately, this all boils down to a lack of innovation. How do you stand out and survive when traditional high street retailers such as BHS, Debenhams, House of Fraser are closing shopping outlets across the country? However, John Lewis and Waitrose have a very key USP of being a partnership, and this should be utilised. Let's score these factors and total them up. This will allow for a comparison later. What could the forces resisting change be? Inflexible attitudes that are passionate about things staying as they are. Employees with years of experience and who have invested a lot of themselves into the company may resist any changes because it would disrupt the norm. Fears of the unknown for employees within the stores and the hope that the changes don't lead to job loss. Training could be rolled out to staff to equip them as customer service ambassadors, healthy eating specialists and personal stylists. However, staff may resist this training or feel under pressure to perform in their new roles. Also, technologies could be implemented that may add to this. What are the costs involved? Completely rebranding these organisations is a massive task and will be very expensive. Some may feel that the cost does not align with the desired effect. For example, rebranding all labelling, food and clothes, store refits, packaging, carrier bags, uniforms, trolleys, and all the respective social media outlets and websites. There is an obligation towards existing customers. Understanding that John Lewis have a core group of customers who value the brand and service just as it is at the moment. Implementing change may turn them away from the company with a loss of loyalty. As well as this, during the changes, customer service may suffer, and this could impact loyal customers who religiously use John Lewis and Waitrose. Assigning a score to these factors and totalling them up, we can see that the forces for change are greater and would indicate a benefit of implementing the proposed change. Management can now think about how the forces for change can be strengthened to support the change and how to weaken the forces against change. to make the overall change a success. Another case study to look at could be that of Royal Mail. In 2010, Royal Mail came under new management, Chief Executive Moira Green. How did the organisation increase profit during a time of privatisation and a changing economic climate? Although they had just come under new management, most of the forces for change really would have been external factors. For example, a change in the market and consumer habits. The market was changing rapidly with online purchasing and e-commerce platforms popping up, and this increased the demand on parcel services and couriers. Royal Mail needed to develop systems to keep up with this demand. Government regulation had recently deregulated the parcels market, no longer making Royal Mail a leader in postal services. This grew to an increase in competition, as there were now a variety of shipping and courier services entering the market, due to the parcel market no longer being regulated. For a long time, the Royal Mail had been the go-to for posting service within the UK, and now they needed to find a strategy to compete and succeed. Political and organisational shifts. There was talk of privatising the Royal Mail once profits and processes had turned around. This would ultimately give the organisation more control over decisions being made, and overall increasing cash flow and profit. Under a new chief executive and director, Moira Green was pushing for a change in management style and leadership. Again, let's assign a score to allow comparison. Let's have a look at the forces resisting change, which are mostly internal. Within Royal Mail, there could be a well-established and ingrained culture because this company has been on the go for years and is well known within the UK. Some employees might find it difficult and want things to remain the norm. There could be a fear of job losses and redundancies. Significant job loss could come from the fact that there is going to be a lot more automation, new technologies and systems in place. This reduces the need for a large workforce. As we've already touched on, the workforce might really resist the change and feel uncertain to what their job roles may look like and whether there'll be training involved. What form will these changes come in and how will it affect their job role? Royal Mail is heavily unionised, making it increasingly difficult to implement changes. This ultimately puts pressure on management and the chief executive. Comparing the totals again, change is likely, as you can see that the forces for change outweigh the forces against. I hope through the use of diagrams and case studies, you are now able to understand how force field analysis could be used for systematic analysis of the factors found in complex problems and decision making. Maybe one day, far away from Heriot Watt, this strategy analysis tool could be of use to help and guide you in your corporate environment as it faces change.